I'm making this diorama based off a movie called Starship Troopers. If you haven't seen the movie, it's pretty much giant insectoid aliens versus humans. It's absolutely awesome. For some reason, the whole entire movie is on YouTube. What? Well, the link is in the description below, but make sure you finish this video before you go and check it out. This build is going to be the Invasion of Klendathu. Now, Klendathu is the alien homeworld, and the Terran Federation thought it would be a good idea to land hundreds of thousands of soldiers on that planet. I'll let you guess how that goes. Let's get started. Klendathu is a desert planet. I begin by cutting pieces of XPS foam on my hot wire cutter. This stuff is super satisfying to cut. All of these pieces will make ground forms that later on will be covered with some soil. For some areas, I attach 2 layers of foam for some extra height and then trim it to size. To make more natural shapes, I just cut off the edges, kind of eyeballing it. And in the movie, the aliens come from caves called bug holes.
Bug hole!
I drew a circle, then separated the halves. I cut the circle from each pieces, so this way when I place my models, the arachnids will be coming out of their bug holes. After cutting out all the pieces, I slapped on some glue and I stuck them down on an MDF board. Ah shit, I dropped it out. There we go. I took the board out into the sun where it can dry faster. I put weights on top of it to stop it from warping. After giving that plenty of time to dry, I cut the excess off the edge, just following along with the board. This leaves a perfect edge. I'll take these pieces of broken cork and hot glue them onto the steepest part of the foam to make cliffs. With the hot glue gun, it sticks instantly. This stuff has some awesome texture and it's super easy to do. You might see those big gaps and say, "That looks terrible!" And my response is, "I'll just fix it later." I mixed a big lot of plaster of Paris, mixed up with some sand and some gravel. This has become my go-to ground texture for dioramas. It's super cheap and looks really good. It comes at the cost of being heavy and being fragile, but since it's a diorama, it'll live out its days on a display shelf and hopefully will never need to be durable. I say hopefully, but it's definitely getting smashed at least once in its lifetime. I put on a bunch of this mix and spread it out with a spatula. This is just about blocking in shapes and then smoothing out all the hard edges. It looks really ugly initially, but after giving it about 15 minutes to dry, I go back with my finger and smooth it out, making it look really natural and like a landform rather than a bunch of plaster spread out with a spatula. I did this in a few stages. The plaster cures too quickly to be able to do it in just one big lot, and each mix had a different ratio of sand to plaster, making each texture a little bit different, and then I blended those together. This is also where I covered any of the holes between the corkboard pieces. This is the building of the base completed, so let's paint this bad boy. I based it out with a sand color, covering the whole entire thing. Klendathu is a desert planet, as I said earlier, which makes this step super easy. Just paint it like a desert. Is choosing a desert lazy? Kinda, but hey, I'll put the extra effort into different parts of the build and, well, that is only really desert in this movie. I washed the whole thing with a dark brown. I don't mean like literally washed it, it's a painting term. I put thin paint over it, just, yeah. The wash brings out all of the details of the ground texture by settling into the recesses. It was looking a bit dark, so to counteract that, I poured on some more water, thinning it out some more. This ensures the original color still shows through. Once the wash dried, I did a dry brush. This is where you wipe off almost all of the paint from the brush, and then when you apply it, the paint only catches on the highest, most raised detail. This adds depth into the base and makes it look a lot more realistic. Finally, I sanded the edges, making them smooth and painted them black. This is like the frame of the diorama, and it's really important that it's clean, otherwise it distracts you from the build. That is the planet surface of Klendathu finished, so let's start on the mobile infantry. I'm going to be 3D printing these guys, so I looked around online for some good options. The only ones that I could find almost had no details at all. But because I'm doing this in a small scale, that doesn't matter at all, so it's totally a win for me. I added supports to these and I sent them to my printer. They took 3 hours to print, but I could print 28 models at once. If you're on the fence about getting a resin 3D printer, just do it. The pieces need to be washed, so I broke them apart and I put them in a jar of methylated spirits. I gave it a shake and that's good enough to clean them off. This is what we are left with after that. There are quite a lot of supports on these guys, so let's crack them off. While removing supports, quite a lot of soldiers lost limbs from me being a bit too rough here and there. But I'm able to turn that into a win, because so many of the mobile infantry got absolutely ripped to shreds. These broken models were turned into soldiers that died fighting the alien threat. Hoorah! I glued the soldiers to popsicle sticks. This makes them a lot easier to handle for painting. They got a quick spray with a grey spray paint, and I took them into the painting desk. The mobile infantry are kinda all grey. That isn't very exciting. I generally paint my stuff colours like purple or bright green, but for this I stuck to the predetermined colour scheme that they were in the movie. It was a super easy paint job. These models are tiny, so with a bit of grey, a skin tone, a wash, and then a quick highlight, they were done. If you aren't a mini painter and have no idea what I just said, well, a base coat is the first layer of, I'm sorry. Wait, you don't actually care? Message received. Cool, let's move on. I painted them, they looked cool. I cut them off their popsicle sticks and I had a big pile of mobile infantry. But I needed to get the arachnids done. I looked online for ages trying to find a good arachnid, but the only versions that I could find were super shitty and low poly, or cost $25, and I'm not about that life. So, rather than just printing these as is, I brought them into Blender, the best 3D editing software ever. I beefed up their limbs so they wouldn't break instantly, and I added a bunch of texture. I also cut them up into multiple pieces so that when they printed, it would actually work instead of just instantly failing. When these were ready, I sent them off to Mr. Photon, my resin 3D printer, and after a couple different printing sessions, they were ready to be removed from their supports. I pulled them off mainly with my fingers, and with a dab of super glue, my whole entire arachnid swarm was ready to be painted. They began with a black spray paint, and then I was working off a few reference photos. In the photos, they have yellow stripes across the model in different places, so painting these guys was a heap of fun. They don't have any fiddly details, so it was just easy to block in colors. Following that, I stippled on some red. Painting minis should be all about enjoying yourself, and that's exactly what I did with these guys. Most of the models that I paint are to be used in a game, whether it's Warhammer, Middle-earth, or Dungeons & Dragons. These models were purely for display. I found this liberating because I didn't need to worry about making them durable, because hopefully I won't be smashing them around with my hands. And I just finished them off with a dark grey dry brush. With that, all of our models are done. This is the part of the video where I tell you that as of posting this video, I'm only up to 600 subscribers, and 70% of the people that watch my video haven't subscribed yet. If you want to see more of my work, hit that red button! Also, for those of you who have seen Starship Troopers, let me know in the comments, Dizzy or Carmen. And I see the statistics, and I know that 99% of my audience is male, so you guys know what I'm talking about. I started to glue everything down. There was a lot of models, and I really took my time to decide where I wanted them to be positioned. All of the mobile infantry would be running towards the front line, where the arachnids and the MI have clashed. There are going to be a bunch of dead MI soldiers there, so all of the guys that were broken got glued down there. I also included a couple dead arachnids because I figured, hey, may as well represent that, and then just put the swarm of arachnids behind them. Now, at this point, it's looking a bit bleak, and we need a lot of blood and guts. So, I brought out the green paint, and I stippled that over the dead arachnids, and then the fun part was bringing out blood for the blood guard. It's literally just a glossy red paint, and I stippled that all over. Dude, this guy got ripped in half. That's sick. I love this diorama. After stippling this all across the unfortunate souls who were casualties of the Great Bug War, I went over the green that I did earlier with some gloss so that it actually looks like blood. And with that, this diorama's done. Let's go check out the final shots. Man, this project was so much fun. I love Starship Troopers. I was so happy to do a diorama putting it together. Now, again, if you liked what you saw, please subscribe, leave a comment, and like the video. Next, I'm going to be working on either an Avengers diorama or a Star Wars diorama. If you have an opinion on which one I should do first, let me know. And until next time, guys, keep crafting.